and welcome back to another episode on Barnes Talk with Callanthea. And on today's episode, I'm going to be discussing managing your fears. And let's face it, we all have fears, whether they're huge fears, small fears, rational, irrational. And it's just about trying to take ownership and recognize what can we actually begin to tackle. And that's why I've named it Start to Manage Your Fears, because it's not always as straightforward as just saying, right, I choose not to be fearful of that thing anymore. A lot of the time it does take work, and some fears will be easier to overcome than others. So, first of all, when I'm talking about fear, okay, fear can be, yes, that really horrible, shaky feeling when maybe you see a spider, right? If you're absolutely terrified of spiders, maybe you've got another kind of large fear that not many people have, maybe fear of being in the outdoors or fear of claustrophobia, right? And those sort of fears can really shake us to our core. And I sympathize with that. And I'm not saying that you should just click your fingers and be okay with those fears. But fear is more than just those feelings. Fear is also just general worry, right? We often hold ourselves back when we are fearful to do something. Even though if we actually challenge that fear, we might realize it's not really anything for us to be scared of, really, especially in the grand scheme of things. So, why should we actually take charge of our fear? Well, first of all, life is far too short, okay? If we don't take charge, who will? And nobody wants to look back on their lives and go, oh, I couldn't quite overcome this and it crippled me and it ruined my life. It is too short. So the more we can take charge, the more that we can grow and learn and improve, the better our lives can be. And also, fear. If we are ruled by our fear, it can compromise our values and our integrity. And I'm going to give some examples of that in a moment. Um, but just really thinking, is it something you want to hold on to? Because if it is, and it's compromising your values and your integrity, you're not really going to be happy or at peace with who you are. So it's really important that we do start to kind of recognize our fears and choose to take ownership of them. So I'm just going to give some of my examples of the different kind of variations of when I've kind of had to work through fear sort of feelings. And then obviously I'm going to give some steps to kind of start to overcome them. And I say start to because, like I said at the beginning, it's not as straightforward as just clicking your fingers and your fears are gone. Okay, so these steps will kind of just help you decide which fears are kind of fears that you can really manageably work on, okay, and which ones might take a lot longer. So, I hope that obviously this is going to be useful to you, but I'm just going to kick off and start talking about some of my examples. So, those people that know me personally know that I don't like spiders, okay? And when I was little, I would scream the house down if I saw a spider. It doesn't matter if it was a small one or a big one. And obviously, that probably stemmed from childhood, seeing my mum be quite fearful of them and killing them and things like that. And it's really not nice. Kids are very impressionable, okay? We do take on from our parents and those people around us. But I was really terrified of spiders. And even when I went to university, I was really scared of spiders. So if there was a spider in my bedroom, which there was at one point, um, I just couldn't deal with it. But being the compassionate person that I am, I did not want to kill the spider. I felt that it was not right to do that, but I was absolutely terrified of it. So typically, what would happen is someone would have to take it out for me, or they'd kill it themselves because they weren't confident enough to take it out. So, and that would just upset me. And spiders, yeah, I still really don't like them at all. And if they just suddenly just appeared out of nowhere, I would be very scared. But I've realized over the past few years that I have started to sort of um, be calmer in those situations. So I might initially get really scared, but rather than feeling like I've got to keep on screaming and freaking out, I just kind of have a few seconds to kind of do my freaking out thing. And then I start to calm down and think of a new perspective. And that perspective is that, yes, the spider might look massive to me, but it's not actually massive compared to me. And yeah, it might look like it runs quick, but I could probably just walk quicker. So, just kind of trying to look at it from that sort of perspective kind of helps sort of almost sympathize with the spider, to try and calm myself down a little bit. But there's been a few times where I've had to really kind of overcome this fear. And I did buy a spider catcher. That was some action that I took forward because I thought a spider catcher isn't going to kill the spider. It gives me an arm's length to kind of grab the spider, rather than having to get a glass and get up close and personal with it. So I thought, right, a spider catcher's for me. So they're not great for working in kind of like trying to get spiders out from corners and awkward, kind of places on the wall. But if they're kind of on a flat surface and it's easy enough to grab with an angle, then they're perfect. They do work really, really well. So that's kind of helped build my confidence up a little bit more. And there was a time when I was in the flat on my own, and there was this disgustingly massive house spider that I don't think I've seen a spider that big before. And I was completely on my own. I did have a spider catcher, but it really shook me to my core. I was that terrified. Um, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, and just realizing that there's no one else to help me. Um, and I thought, right, I'm either going to have to kill it or take it out. Killing it, I'd be absolutely, kind of traumatized and feel like really guilty for it. Or I take it out and I'm probably going to be traumatized doing it, but I won't have killed the spider. Anyway, it probably took me up to an hour to pluck up the courage to try and get this spider out. Um, and it was in an awkward place. It was like in between like my speakers and things like that. And I was trying to like move it around, and oh God, it was awful. And when I grabbed it and I finally took it out, I just thought, I can't believe I've gone through that. I can't believe I've overcome that. I was really, really scared. Um, but it's just kind of shown me that, if I can overcome kind of taking spiders out with a spider catcher, that's, a massive thing for me when I was absolutely terrified of them. So I just think that it's not always about being kind of perfect with your fears. I will still be scared of a spider. If someone else was around, I'd rather they take out the spider. But just knowing that actually I do have the capability to take out a spider with a spider catcher, and that makes me feel more in control of it. And also that I'm not actually kind of going against my values where I don't want to kill anything, right? I don't want to be responsible um, for the death of another being. It doesn't matter whether that being is a spider. Um, it still just doesn't seem right because at the end of the day, being scared of spiders, at least in England, it is an irrational fear. For the most part, it is an irrational fear. So it's not a life or death situation, and it's something that they just don't deserve to be killed just because we're a little bit scared, even though we're a lot bigger than they are. So I kind of thought I have to kind of start working on this, and I have made progress. I have made those improvements, and I'm really glad for that because there's nothing worse than being paralyzed by fear, and feeling like powerless. Literally, you can't do anything. I wanted to kind of empower myself because there has been times when I've lived on my own, and you have to be braver when you live on your own. So that was like one example. And maybe you can relate to another example. Maybe it's a fear of heights for you, or fear of clowns, or something like that, but a really quite intense fear that you might have. But there's also kind of fear that is more kind of subtle fear where you just kind of worry, and it might be worrying about what the outcome's going to be. What if you fall on your face? What if you fail? What if someone laughs at you? What are other people going to think? And all of those kind of thoughts tie into fear. So, a recent example is when I kind of took part in a theatre performance in October. I obviously had to audition for it, and being 30, I've not done anything like that, as an adult. And I was thinking, oh, am I even good enough? Just because I'd enjoy it, am I actually even good enough? And am I going to make a fool of myself? And all of these sort of thoughts came into my head, and I just kind of thought, no, I'm going to do it because I know that I love pushing that kind of discomfort. It's like the second I start to feel a little bit scared of something, I kind of just head towards it. And that's just kind of my personality, where I'm like, I don't want this to kind of control me. I need to kind of overcome it. So I did go to the audition and my knees were shaking. I don't know if they could see, but they were absolutely shaking. And I thought, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Anyway, I obviously did a good enough job because I did get the part, and I was really happy about that. And then obviously I had to overcome the kind of nerves, kind of worry to actually go on stage and obviously perform the lines. And I'd never had an acting part like that was like such a big part. Um, so I was really worried that, being inexperienced, that I wouldn't remember my lines. But I really just kind of took charge of it and yeah, I just took ownership of my lines and really kind of just gave it everything, even through some difficult times. And I'm really proud of myself for that. So it is possible to overcome those sort of fears as well. And then I do have a more kind of embarrassing example because I think if I can't be vulnerable and share these things, then, how are you going to be able to relate? There might be someone listening right now who's like, yeah, but I'm just scared of being embarrassed and that's my thing. So I'm going to give you an example of me being embarrassed, right? And I've still survived. So there was this guy on the train. I used to see him all the time, and I kind of felt like we had this connection, right? Anyway, I ended up leaving my job, and I didn't see him again. And then when I got another job, in the city again, I went on the train and I saw him, and I swear he recognised me, right? So I thought, right, I'm just gonna, just do my thing, go to work. And then it kind of came over me. I was like, like how else are you supposed to put yourself out there? So this one day, oh my God, I don't even know how I did it. I would never do this. Again, I think I was just curious just to see like whether I could do it or not. I basically went up to him and I was like, hi. And I was like, oh, do you want to go for a drink? And he said he had a girlfriend, which he might have had a girlfriend. I kind of hope he did. Otherwise, he's just kind of made up an excuse to avoid me. But he had a little chat with me. It was really nice. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't believe I've done this. And I've instantly been rejected. And it was a weird feeling. It was like, please swallow me up ground. And then there was another part that was like, this is hilarious. Like, it's really funny. So I went home and I was like half smiling, half crying, I swear. Like, I was just like, oh, I feel so sick, but it's so funny. And I told my family and they found it amusing. And again, a bit like, oh my God, I can't believe you've done that. And I just thought, you know what though? It's done. It's done. I survived. And I feel like the onus is always put on the guy to come up to a girl and ask a girl out. And that must be really terrifying for them. And I've kind of got a taste of what that feels like and also a taste of what it's like to be rejected. So it was embarrassing. And it is one of those kind of memories I look back on and I cringe. But I'm like, but guess what? That fear did not control me. And I didn't die from asking him out, right? So, and if anything, I probably gave him a confidence boost. So, guys like their ego. So, it's not really such a bad thing after all. But yeah, that's just like another silly example, really, where you might feel fearful. Oh, what if I get rejected? What if I'm embarrassed? What if I just make a fool of myself? But I'm like, own it. Just own it. Be confident and all will be okay. So, they're my examples of fear and me trying to overcome my fear, right? So, now that brings me on to the steps to overcome and manage your fears. So, you're probably thinking right now, well, there's a few things where I feel a little bit worried in this situation or a bit concerned about what other people think in this situation. Or maybe there's a bigger fear which has kind of crippled you most of your life, right? I want you to kind of focus on these steps and hopefully they will help you start to kind of manage your fears. So, the first one is to write down what you're actually fearful of, right? Get all of those fears written down from the big fears to the smaller fears to any fears that you might think seem insignificant, but they are actually impacting you and deciding a life for you, right? Just get them all down. So for me, it might be spiders, worried about, again, kind of being embarrassed in a situation or something like that, or yeah, I don't really know. I've not really thought too much of this, to be fair, because I do kind of work on my fears naturally. Um, but just get them all down, okay? Get them all down. And then what I would do is identify, for step two, identify the rational fears versus the irrational. So, the rational fears are obviously those fears where you could literally die, right? Your life is in danger. If you, let's say, you're scared of a snake and you go somewhere where there's a big poisonous snake that could kill you, well, it's rational to be afraid of it and rational to get away from it. But the irrational fear would be coming across, I don't know, a little lizard um, that isn't going to hurt you, that isn't poisonous. And that's, irrational if you're really scared of that. So just kind of put these into those kind of different sections. Which ones are rational and which ones are irrational? And I can guarantee that the majority of them, if not all of them, are actually classed as irrational. Those fears that aren't really going to hurt us, right? We're not in a life-threatening situation, but we're still scared. So once you've kind of got your fears down, you've decided which ones are rational and irrational, I would then move on to step three and I would choose to work on your irrational fears. And it might be you've got quite a few, and then you decide to prioritize, right? Choose a fear, an irrational fear that you want to work on, and you've got to consciously want to do better. And it's not about saying, well, I'm scared of spiders, so I need to get to the point where I'm holding them in my hand. But it is about thinking, what can I do to feel more confident in dealing with this situation that normally makes me quite fearful? Just like how I got a spider catcher and I was able to kind of grab them, take them out, and the spider's not hurt, I'm not hurt. So there are ways that you can kind of manage your fears. And if you can completely overcome them, then absolutely more credit to you. So I would kind of just make that choice really to say, right, I am going to work on my irrational fear. And for step four, I think it's really important that you accept that you're going to be uncomfortable because if you're going to want to overcome your fear, you're going to feel uncomfortable going through it, right? And I think that's why a lot of people kind of avoid their fears because it's kind of almost just easy to say, well, you know what? I don't really like this feeling of everyone judging me, or I don't really like worrying that I'm going to like fall flat on my face. But actually, if you can do that, then you're working through your discomfort, and that is so, so important. And it's just easy to accept that. At the outset. So, a little bit like again with the spiders saying, right, I want to overcome my fear of spiders. I know I'm going to be uncomfortable when I see them. I'm going to be a little bit scared. I'm going to feel very nervous when I take them out. But you have to accept that that's how you're going to feel. And a little bit like, with the power of now, the presence, I've got an episode on that. If you can kind of observe your fear and observe the feeling, the more you kind of put that consciousness onto it, it will sort of start to dissolve and have less power over you. So it is really important that you just kind of accept the feeling, allow it to be. And then for step five, I would then decide take action while staying in your integrity. So, what action steps can you take to start to overcome your fear? And it might be that if you're scared of something like a spider, you start to look at pictures of spiders, right? And you just try to observe the feelings of the fear that's arising and try to get a little bit more kind of comfortable with it. And then your next step might be, right, I am going to um, take them out. I'm going to get a spider catcher and I'm going to take them out. And it might be something kind of different, right? Where you want to put yourself out there in life, but you're worried about being rejected, right? You've got to take action to start overcoming and managing your fears. So you decide what action that is. And it might be that you start off really small, you build up. But when I say stay in your integrity, that's really important because, again, the example, if you don't like killing things, and you don't want kind of your fear to kind of force you to kill, then you need to stay in your integrity. You need to make that choice and take action to not kill, right? So, how are you going to achieve that? Well, you'll probably have to take that spider out. So, just kind of focus on that really. Take action while staying in your integrity. And then lastly, for step 6, I would just reflect on any progress you made and all the bravery that you've kind of had, felt and had to go through. So there's that saying where true courage is when you feel the fear and you do it anyway, right? That is what courage is. That is what bravery is. So it's really important to kind of reflect on where you've really kind of been brave. Okay, you've done something even though you felt scared. And obviously reflect on your progress and just notice, are you sort of feeling more comfortable now around this irrational fear? To the point where it's going to go away as an irrational fear? Or do you think that you're still probably going to have this irrational fear, but you are managing it better? Either way, progress has been made, and that's really important. So, I hope that those steps really do help you, those 6 steps. And obviously, my sort of examples, I hope that they've kind of let you see that it doesn't matter what type of fear you've got, you can always do something to start to manage them in order to have obviously a happier life. We know that life is far too short to be ruled by fear. So we've got to do everything we can to obviously work on those fears. So, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. It's been really good for me to share my vulnerabilities, as always. I really hope that you join me for another episode next week. And remember, stay true to you, and hopefully, I'll see you soon.